I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You're the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. I have a question for you. Who do you trust? Do you trust the media? Do you trust politicians? Do you trust your boss? Do you trust your pastor, your spouse? Well, if you think about it, trust is a pretty big deal, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to learn some things about trust, how to maybe build trust, real trust, not just manipulating people into thinking they can trust you when they can't. And I've got someone here who has really dedicated his life to this issue. In fact, he has a new book out. He's written several. Some of them have done, I should say, all of them have done very well. But the latest book from our guest, David Horsager, is Trust Matters More Than Ever. And I mean, that's a statement that you really don't have to argue with people about, because I think they get it. He is also the CEO of the Trust Edge Leadership Institute, and he goes around speaking to people, a lot of corporate environments, but beyond just that, because trust, it's in every area of our lives. So I'm going to learn some things today, and I invite you to stick around and learn some things too. David, welcome to Life Today Live. Great to have you today.
Randy, thanks so much for inviting me.
So a couple of foundational things. Number one, why would you, I guess of all the career paths, you know, you mentioned you just spoke at A&M, Texas A&M, where my son and daughter-in-law graduated. I don't think they have a major in trust. How do you get this career path?
Yeah. Well, my grad work is organizational leadership, but, you know, I came out of full-time ministry 30 years ago, youth and family. I'd created some leadership work, and people started asking me to share it in corporate. And I'm at this corporate event, I don't know, 1999 or something like that. And I was being asked about this work, and I started thinking about the real problem. I'm like, that problem isn't what they think it is. It's not a leadership problem. It's not a sales problem. They don't trust. And so I started looking into trust more. That led to my grad work. And, you know, the fundamental first finding was really, I believe, you know, without ego, a lack of trust is the biggest expense we have. Everything of value is built on trust. Trust is not a soft skill. It affects the GDP of a country. It affects when we deal with presidents of countries on corruption issues, pro sports teams, businesses, you know, that fundamental research that showed how a lack of trust is the biggest cost in an organization. I can talk about that later. That led to the start of this work, and we ended up speaking, you know, I ended up being asked to teach at one of the military academies on this work, and we had the first organization we worked with. They dropped attrition rates by millions of dollars. Then we had a Fortune 50 company that said it helped them gain market share. Last year we had the Admiral of the Navy say it helped them drop suicide rates. We've had people say it tripled their sales and saved their marriage. But it really, when they start thinking about trust differently and seeing the core of trust, they start to, you know, affect the real issue. And so it started a long time ago, and it led me to, you know, really my ministries in the sharing biblical truth because, you know, it's based on this, in essence, secular research, but it's biblical truth. But God was talking about it before me, but it turns out it works, you know, it affects change. And, you know, we've become known as I think Forbes last month said the world authority on trust. And they put our book, this Trust Matters book that you shared, as the top book of the year, 2024. It just came out at the end of the year. And I'm passionate about this work because I've seen it change people, organizations, churches, ministries, and it changed me along the way and continues to. So I'm totally imperfect at everything I teach.
So let's define it, because I'm not sure we need to get us all on the same page. How do you define trust?
I define it, and this is really important, because I kind of thought I knew it all about trust, doing the grad work and all this, and like, oh, it's just this, it's just character, it's just that. And interestingly today, when I started the research, by the way, nobody was talking about trust in leadership organizations. Now everybody's talking about it. And there's all kinds of, you know, people talking about trust, experts talking about trust with and without research. And so just to give a little life to it, you know, there's people today that say, oh, trust is transparency. Well, we know from the research, and we put out, I think, the biggest study out of North America on trust and leadership, transparency can build trust, but Some of your kids are so transparent on social media, I don't trust them for a second. So it's not everything, right? It's confidentiality is also trusted. So what is it? So trust, the way we define it, is trust is a confident belief in a person, a product, or an organization. And to gain the kind of trust we talk about, a confident belief, by the way, that can be for good or bad. So Randy, we can have someone, if you're late consistently all the time, I will absolutely trust you to be late, right? So
Right.
that's just trust on its own. Trust can be good or bad. Then the kind we talk about is for positive impact and influence. So that's a different kind of trust. Like, we want to build trust for positive impact and influence. And so, consistently, it's a little different than that. So,
All right.
a confident belief.
So, and by the way, I love when science catches up with Scripture, as it does quite often. So, So, the science of it. What does it reveal when you start looking at people's attitudes? I don't know. What all do you look at when you look at that?
Well, this is really interesting. So we can get into the 8-pillar framework of exactly how trust is built. We know that. I believe that. And I don't like consultants come in with egos. It's always this way or that way, but it is always these 8. And we can get into that. That's how trust is built. So that's definitely a science of it. That's been revalidated by outside universities. And we'll talk about exactly how trust is built. But the science also first was trust is the leading indicator. It's the key driver of, people think they have an engagement issue. It's not. The only way to get engagement is trust. We got an innovation issue. Think about this, just without all the research, and I can give you research, but like, the reason I follow Lead or Not is trust. The reason we buy is trust. You trust the product, the service, or the person. It's not a sales issue. Innovation on a team only goes up when people trust each other. Otherwise, someone's scared to share an idea. Learning from the pulpit to the classroom only happens when I trust the content, the teacher, professor, pastor, or the psychological safety or trust of the room. Marketing messages, they're only amplified when I trust the message. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. The biggest Harvard diversity study shows diversity of almost any kind puts or pits people against each other unless we increase trust. Only then can we get benefits from it. So we have to deal with trust. And the science, if I'm going to simplify it on your show today, I can give you all this research and data that shows the number one reason people want to work for an organization last year in first world countries was not compensation or a more fun work environment with a ping pong table. It was, in fact, trusted leadership. Number one reason people buy, trust. And we can go into a host of things that way, but let's simplify it really quick. Look, a good example of the cost, simple cost, and we can even get into what Scripture says about this, but the cost, a lock is a good example, because the only reason I put a lock on anything, only reason I put a lock on a bicycle, a mailbox, or a home is because I don't trust. Otherwise, I wouldn't waste my time, right? So what is the cost of that lack of trust? Well, there are 2 costs. One, money, I got to buy the lock. That's a cost. But the biggest cost is time. Now I've got to open it every time I go through the gate, or every time I go into my home, every time. And that's a cost of time. What if it's a combination, like forevermore, right? So massive cost. And that's the same with you and I. If I've got if I've got teenagers like I do, they're going out with friends Friday night that I trust, feels great. They go out with friends I don't trust, biggest stress I have on a Friday night. It's the same with every listener. They've got right now, they're going to work or they're at work. They've got people that got their back. They trust. They're working with people they trust. That feels great. They got people on their team they don't trust. That's the biggest stress they have at work. Yeah. It adds cost of double checking. We know attrition, losing one person you wanted to keep, that costs three times higher, salary. So it's a massive cost when you lose trust. So, that's one side of it. Of course, we got to get into how to build it, but that's part of it. Maybe I should just touch on the biblical side of this for a second. Yeah. Let you in here, aren't I, Randy? Yeah. Jump in when you want. It's your show.
No, go. I'm fascinated. I'm just sitting here learning. This is great.
Yeah. So, before we get into how to build it, which is really intriguing, by the way, and you can do more than you think about it. We've seen presidents of countries you never thought and opposition come together you never would have believed in. We've seen policing issues and corporate issues. People, there's no hope for them, and they rebuild trust. So there is hope. That's what I have to say there. But basically, scripturally, there's 2 big themes in Scripture about trust. One is, of course, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust the Lord with all your heart, lean on your understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll make your paths straight. And what to trust, what not to trust in the Psalms 44. I don't trust in that bow. I don't trust in the chariots. I don't trust in my horses. I don't trust in this. I don't trust in that. I trust in the name of the Lord my God. And so you have this whole piece of anyone who trusts in him, Romans 10:9, will not be put to shame, 10:11. You have all of that. But you also have this second theme in Scripture, and there's loads more, as you can imagine there. The reason Moses and Aaron don't go in the Daniel lion's den, Daniel 6:23, there was no wound found on him because he trusted his God. And then there's, Moses and Aaron don't get to go into the promised land, Moses and Aaron, because they didn't trust God enough. There's something about trusting him, right? The biggest overlap in my secular work really is the second theme in Scripture, and that's the Romans 12:22. The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in the trustworthy. And that's the Jethro talking to Moses saying, hey, quit doing all this on your own. Find those that are trustworthy and put them over the thousands and hundreds and tens and fives. And that's Nehemiah saying, we got to get rid of them. We got to find people that are trustworthy and put them in front of the, in charge of the storehouses. And so then this theme of how trust is built, that's threaded through Scripture. These 8 pillars are what we call now the 8-pillar framework.
All right. This is fascinating because I can relate to it in so many different areas and see the value. 8 pillars. We're not going to get to them all. And so this is the point in the interview where I show people the book again, Trust Matters More Than Ever by David Horsager, because Horsager, my bad, because we're not going to be able to get to everything in detail. And so if you want to really dive deep and learn how to build this, you're going to, just get the book or you can go to David's website, davidhorsager.com, and you might catch him somewhere speaking in person, but a lot of these things I think are probably closed corporate events. He also has a podcast. So there's your follow-up. I like to give my audience resources if they want to go deeper into this. But
there's lots of free resources there. I'll just tell you, there's loads. Okay. We want to help people that can't even afford a book,
Yeah.
So but the book is on sale. The great thing about Trust Matters More Than Ever is it's got 40 tools you can use tomorrow to build trust. Like you've seen the book. It's so beautifully designed. It's so tabs, and it's unlike any other leadership book. It's just like tab, tab, tab. Like look at this, look at that. It's like it's color. It's you can just look up. Oh, how do I build trust in the middle of conflict? Oh, page this. Oh, how do I do this? So unlike my, the first book, 365-page Trust Edge, which is still selling and great, and unlike, the storybook Trusted Leader, and unlike, some of these others that I've written, this is just packed with tools to solve things. In fact, in the back, there's an index for the 40 tools. Oh, I need to be more clear because I know being clear with my team is trusted. Okay, MRA, that strategy, the ODC message. How do you get clear expectations to your team? Simple strategies. So it's full of just tools you can use right now, tomorrow morning. But anyway.
So for all those who are like, I think this guy's just trying to sell books, let's give them something else that starts with a C: content.
Yeah,
hit one of these things so that people really understand.
Yeah. So let's start with the first pillar. What we found is people trust the clarity. It's number 1 pillar, not in order of weight, and they're relatively co-equal, but people trust the clear and they mistrust or distrust the ambiguous or the overly complex. Where I was a professor, I'm going to look complex to look smart. We lose clarity when we look smart, and we lose trust. Mm-hmm. You got to simplify. The clever is not as good as clear today. Clarity wins. And in our day and age, marketing people don't get this, branding people don't get this. I'm talking about clarity at a new level. There's 9 tools in there to increase clarity. And some of them one of them is the reason, the way I lost 52 pounds in 5 months in 2011, actually. It wasn't a fitness idea. It was a clarity idea that helped me get there and get hope to do it. So anyway, people trust the clear. And you can think about this in any way. You got a leader, they're not clear about the vision. I don't trust them. You got a manager that's not clear about expectations. I might not trust them. You got a teacher. They're really kind, but they're not clear about assignments. So the kids go home frustrated and don't trust them, right? So a salesperson might be clear about the wrong things. They're clear about how cool they are and how long they've been in business, but not clear about the benefits of that product to me. So I don't buy. So clarity wins, and it's another level of clarity. So we're going to give a couple little quick ideas on content. Let's give a couple simple ones. And by the way, working with the biggest companies in the world, what they love about our work, I think, is how simple they love that it comes out of research, but that I can use it tomorrow. It's simple, it's usable, it's not this big stay in theory forever. So I'll give you a couple ideas. Pastors, leaders, friends, Here's one idea. You want to give a message that is going to make an impact today. It has to be MRA. It's got to be memorable. It's got to be repeatable. It's got to be actionable. Look at your values of your church, your organization, your family, or your company. If they aren't memorable, repeatable, and actionable, it doesn't matter. So when we say, oh, let's just have integrity. Integrity, what's that? You go to jail if you don't have it. Integrity is so blah. People don't change how they act. Our value that's similar is our people need to be the same on stage and off. Everybody's got a stage in our company.
Yeah.
It might be the phone. It might be me literally on a stage in front of thousands of people. But I learned that. I changed our value when I was booked to be on the biggest stage in the country, 100,000 people or something watching. I was the least known of the 10 big name speakers that everybody here knows. And I went backstage and I thought how cool it was going to be to meet somebody that I'd read their books and I looked up to them. I met them in person and it was the saddest day of my life.
Yeah, right.
Because they were a whole lot different in the green room than they were on stage.
Yeah.
And so memorable, repeatable, actionable. Next one, another idea. I'll give you a couple of acronyms because these can be learned quickly. Expectations. Okay. One of the biggest frustrations when we do an enterprise trust index on an organization that measures trust across an organization and we close gaps, they're frustrated because managers don't give clear expectations. So here's a simple way to do it. My first role as a CEO of an organization or leader of an organization, was it was in a different state. I was younger than all my staff. I wasn't getting what I wanted from my team. I finally learned it was my fault. And I got clear about ODC, not OCD. O, the outcome. What's the outcome we want from this? D, what's a deadline, an actual number tomorrow, not soon, because that means different things. Can I see that soon? Doesn't matter. When's soon to you?
Yeah.
When's the deadline? And C, clarifiers. Let them clarify back. Are you clear on this project? Are we clear? Am I clear? So ODC, and to simplify it for everybody listening, let's go to kids because this works at home too.
Yeah.
My daughters, I got 4 kids, but the daughters were maybe 5 and 7 years old. They stayed in the same room in those days. And my wife and I had a different perspective on what a clean room looks like. So I said, fine, we're not going to be, domineering parents. We're just going to make it 2 things. Number 1, girls, do you know, how about we do this? No clothes on the floor. Do you know what clothes are? Yep, we know what the floor is. Yeah, it's under there somewhere. Okay, number 2, the bedspread or comforter over the pillow. Just the top over. I don't know what's going on underneath. Just let that be enough. That's fine. Okay. So he said, this is the outcome. I don't know about the plastic necklaces hanging off the bureau. I don't know what's going on in the closet. Who cares? Just these 2 things. Okay.
Yeah.
Saturday morning before you get to play with friends, whatever. First Saturday morning, they come down. Hey, can we play with our friends? Yes, it's a free day. By the way, is your room clean? Well, I don't know, but remember 2 things. Oh yeah. And they went and self-diagnosed because it was clear enough. Yep. These 2 things. So that's how clear we need to be. 2 little ideas for you. MRA, ODC, of course, they get more complex, but they're all simple to understand and apply in the book. But those come under clarity. Let's jump one more way here and see how that threads to what God says. So clarity, without vision, people perish in Proverbs 29. The words, a lamp to my feet, a light to my path. I mean, Nehemiah, boy, he wins on clarity. We're going to build this wall. We're going to do, this is one, everybody focus, right? So that's what leaders, that's what parents, that's what dads need to be today, is clear in the right way, of course, as one of the 8 pillars. Just to give context here, number 2 pillar is compassion. And you see in scripture, Colossians 3, clothe yourselves with compassion. What are Christians supposed to look like? They're supposed to look like they have compassion all over their bodies. Okay, great. And we give tools for how do you show compassion in the workplace, because actually, funny enough, it drives the bottom line and impact and mission and everything else.
Yeah, and Lord knows it definitely comports over to the area of church. We've seen a lot of trust erode in the last 2024, and it's sad, and it's destructive. One thing I have noticed, and not just in the last year, this is true, and is that when people lose trust in leadership, Christian and pastors or Christian television right now, there's some issues going on. Those who fall away, you find out that their trust was more in the people. Those who really have a true trust in God and His goodness and His purpose and His involvement, they work through them. And because they're working with flawed people, but a perfect God paradigm as opposed to just the people side of it, who will always let you down at some point. And so, I mean, the trust, in the ministry world is everything. And of course, when you're running like a nonprofit like us, people have to trust that we're going to do what we say we're going to do, and that we're going to use their funds wisely. Stewardship is a big part of trust. But I have a question. I want to jump because we could spend as you've probably done.
I can talk about this for 8 days.
I know. We could do this for a long time. I have a question though. I'm just curious about, because part of my issue with trusting anybody, whether it's an organization, a business, a politician, a pastor, is that I don't trust their motives. In other words, they may say the right things, do the right things, look great, have 5-star reviews, but I always go back to why. Why do you want me to trust you? And are you just manipulating me to get what you want? And that's, I mean, I'm sure I could see a counselor and they could straighten me out on some of those things. But what's the difference between building real trust as opposed to building something that is vain and self-serving?
Well, two things that come to mind. Number one, you're not too unlike Jesus there, because if you remember John 2:24, Jesus is looking at those in Jerusalem and he says, I know their hearts, therefore I do not trust them.
Yeah.
And there's a truth to this healthy skepticism, certainly. So when I talk about trust, I want to help people be the most trusted by being trustworthy. That doesn't mean I believe you should trust everyone. Or if you do trust them to do what they did to you last time, right?
Right.
So that's the seventh pillar, results, contributing results. We trust on what people do. Or the eighth pillar, consistency. We trust on what you do all the time. This is Jesus, this is God over and over and over. What is it, 600 times or something? He talks about the heart. The heart is what we judge by. And so in any case, there are some things there. One, got to check our own hearts, because we might be doing that because we think no one else can be trustworthy.
Yeah, right.
Number two, what I'm going for is actually not trust. People say, David, you love creating the most trusted leaders in their organizations, the most trusted companies in the industry. The problem, of course, with these pillars is you can manipulate them, as you mentioned, and not be actually trustworthy. So what we are going for actually is trustworthiness, which is true, which interestingly in my work, you can really only have without God, but that's what I'm going for and hoping for. So some of the ways we work around that is we can set systems in organization that motivate trustworthiness. They still might do it with the wrong heart, but you can set systems. And secondly, this is the prayer that God would work on people and have it be true. And so there is value to questioning motives and other things, but that's why we kind of look at all 8, and you'll see them in the book. But when you put all 8 together, you have a really good measure of trustworthiness.
Yeah. I think it goes back to, you got to check your own heart, like you said first. Really, before you sit down with a book like yours and start to do the steps, I think from a Christian standpoint, you got to look inward, because, all the things fall. The dominoes fall when your heart's not right.
Well, the book can lead you through that, but I'll tell you something is, everybody knows, even non-Christians know the idea of love your neighbor as yourself, which is really interesting because it kind of shows that, boy, you have to love yourself. Right. You have to love yourself for how God made you, right, or you have a hard time loving others, right? If we don't see God in us, in our identity, Jesus, what he did for us, we have a hard time loving others. People, and I know people that don't love themselves very much, and they are not very loving of others, right?
Right.
This is the same with trust. You have someone who doesn't trust themselves very much. They have a hard time building trust in others, believing anybody else can be trustworthy. So part of it is those that don't trust themselves don't trust others, and they're not very trustworthy. And that's mostly because of one thing. Mostly because they don't make and keep commitments, especially to themselves. So the only way to rebuild trust, there's a 10-step process in the book, whether you're a company with an oil spill or an individual with moral failure, but it's not like it's easy, but it always comes down to one thing. The only way to rebuild trust, it's not the apology. I'm sorry I'm late. No, you're not. You're late every time. Right. The only way to rebuild trust is to make and keep a new commitment.
Oh boy. And as a man, commitments.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I get it. Okay. Wow. This.
Well, accountability, one way to help, there's 8, the 40 strategies or tools, but one of the ways there is 40, is the accountability, healthy accountability is one way forward. That's why we need community. That's why God sent them out, 2 by 2. That's why let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. Hebrews 10:24. We need accountability. And let me tell you something as an inspiration, not as an ego. And that is, I have had an accountability group of 4 guys for 31 years. We meet together every year. I talk to one of them about it every other day, but we meet every year for an extended time when we each share for several hours through a series of questions. And we love each other and we get in each other's grill. And you can't talk about what someone else can do, what your wife could do better. You got to talk about what you can do better. And it's interesting because we're talking about this today, because right after this show, I grab my bag and I leave for our accountability extended weekend right after this deal. So it's on my mind.
I hope it's someplace fun at least.
It's a great place.
Undisclosed location. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, man. You really. This is an interesting interview for me because I feel like we're barely scratching the surface, and you've got me really interested. So let me do a couple things. This is the book, Trust Matters More Than Ever, by David Horsager. And let me grab his website. It looks like this. And again, podcast there. There's also some other tools.
You also have 100 or 200 videos online that are free. You don't have to get, people can get Trust Edge certified, bring this into their company or their church and ministry. And that's awesome. And we have so many tools you can use and reach out about that. That's at the Trust Edge. That's at the Institute site, trustedge.com. But we love helping people, helping, God transform places and lives and individuals and organizations. But go to the YouTube channel and see a couple hundred free videos too if you want.
Perfect. That is exactly where I was going. So people that want to follow up, you got a lot of good resources out there, and you've been doing this a long time. You got the science, you got the scripture. I love all that, by the way. Can someone who has had a lifetime of bad patterns and reliably unreliable can they ever be trusted again? Can they come back? Can someone change?
Can Paul? Can Saul? Look, we have a problem in the church even believing people can change, and yet we say we believe in Jesus. And that's a big problem. Now, let me say it with experience and a little salt of wisdom, hopefully. One, it is difficult. I'm not saying you just trust people blindly. But I have seen people change. I've seen organizations change. I've seen when the president of Kenya and Kenyatta and Odinga, nobody would have ever thought they would have shook hands together, let alone be on the same stage. And that hug shake for Kenya, that they came together toward the end of their time, and that kind of changed the country. Now they've got challenges again, but I'm telling you, that changed the view of hope. And it was genuine. Like there was real willingness to rebuild trust and change some ways as far as bloodshed and other things. So I've seen it happen. I have hope. And at some point, if someone's too poisonous to you, your church, your leadership team, there is a time to let go, even if you hope the best for them and that they can change and God can change everyone. But that doesn't mean you don't have a responsibility to your flock.
Yeah. I like to give people hope, and so I appreciate that. And if you want to work on the trust, you pick up the book, go to the website, watch the videos, wherever. Consider this and let God work on you, because trust is foundational, and we can all change. We can be better. And I think you need God to do it, but you can at least start with some of David Horsager's steps in the right direction.
God's in that. It's not a how-to, like God. It's all biblical truth. You'll see it. Most of my people don't think that. I think that's why it works, by the way.
I love it. All right. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you guys watching today. Hit that share button if you haven't liked, followed, or subscribed. Do that. We'll see you again next time here on Life Today Live.